Well, good morning, everybody, and can I extend a very warm welcome to you all on behalf of Deputy Convener Councillor Kelly, members and officers both here in Grangemouth and online. Can I welcome you to this meeting held in Grangemouth Wednesday, the 21st of August. In accordance with Section 43 of the Local Government in Scotland Act 2003, it has been directed that this meeting will be conducted in such a manner as to allow a remote attendance by elected members. The meeting will also be live streamed. Go to the business of the meeting, starting with apologies.
Thank you, Convener. We have apologies submitted by Provost Bissett and Councillor Murtagh. Thank you, Convener.
Hey, thank you for that. That takes us to item 2 in your agenda, which is declaration of interest. And just for clarity, I'll read this out. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Have we any declarations of interest at this time? Councillor Bowes?
It's working. I do apologise.
No.
Item 5, the objector contacted me on that one, and I think it's probably right through perception of the public that I recuse myself from the item.
Okay, thank you. Any other declaration of interest at this time? None? Okay, then that takes us to item 3 in your agenda this morning, which is the minute of meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 12th of June 2024, pages 3 to 8 in your agenda. Is there any questions arising from that minute? None? Okay, thank you for that. Takes us to item 4 in your agenda this morning, construction of dwelling house at land to the southeast of 39 Laxdale Drive, Head of Muir for Mr. B. Cuthell as a continuation. Okay then, I'll just go over that again. We're now at item 4 on your agenda. Construction dwelling Drive, Head of Muir for Mr. B. Cuthell. It's pages 9 to 24 on your agenda, and it was the subject of a site visit previously. Now, before we bring in for the report, there was a deputation request. An application has been made by Councillor Brian McCabe, local member, to be received as a deputation to be heard in respect of the item of business. We agreed to allow Councillor McCabe to speak? Agreed to that? Fine, thank you. Okay, it's an opportunity now for our officer, Mr. Brent Vivian, to come forward with the report. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you, Convener. This application seeks planning permission in principle for a dwelling house. Members will recall that the committee considered the application on 12th of June when it was agreed to further continue consideration of the application to receive a deputation from Councillor McCabe, who was unable to attend the 12th of June meeting. The further continuation followed a continuation of the application agreed by committee on the 15th of May to allow the committee to carry out a site visit to view the physical characteristics of the site. The site visit took place on the 27th of May. The planning assessment is contained within the original report dated the 15th of May, and it is to that report that I now refer. That report advises that an indicative site plan has been submitted with the application, which indicates a one-bedroom, single-storey dwelling house centrally located within the site, and that the site consists of a small former play park area. Section 3 of the original report records the site history. That comprises an application in 2023 for construction of a dwelling house, which was subsequently withdrawn, and also an application in 2023 for a change of use of open space to garden ground and construction of a boundary fence and garden steps. And that application was granted in January 2024. Section 4 of the original report summarises the consultation responses. No objections were received in the consultation responses. The Roads Development Unit requested conditions to attach to any grant of planning permission in relation to vehicular access, formation of the driveway and sightlines. One public representation was originally received, and the matters raised are summarised in section 6 of the original report. Those matters were that the dwelling house is shown indicatively as being less than 1 metre from the western site boundary, and that there is a 35-foot tree which overhangs onto the proposed plans for the dwelling. Since the original report was prepared, a further representation was received, and the matters raised in that further representation summarised in the update report dated the 12th of June. Those matters were that the site is at the end of a cul-de-sac and a turning point for cars, and the path leading to the ground is a busy walkway for children attending Headofmuir Primary, and it is considered that there would be a health and safety risk while the building was being constructed. The application is assessed against the relevant policies of the development plan in section 7A of the original report. In summary, there are concerns in principle that the plot size is too small to accommodate a dwelling house, while being able to respect the townscape character of the area and achieve a satisfactory level of residential amenity, including the provision of adequate privacy. The original report set out a recommendation to refuse planning permission in principle, and it is not considered that any new matters have been raised in the two subsequent update reports that would alter the original recommendation. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Brent. It's now an opportunity for Mr. Councillor McCabe to step forward. Councillor McCabe, you know the situation. You have a 10-minute period to summarise your representation, and then there'll be an opportunity for members to ask any questions of you. Before that, I'll bring our legal representative here, Mr. Henderson, in at this particular juncture. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. You're quite correct that deputation has been agreed, and Councillor McCabe, as the deputy, would have 10 minutes to address the committee on the application. Following that, the committee members would have 10 minutes in which to ask any questions of Councillor McCabe as the deputy, but during that period there would be no discussion as to the merits of the application, which would await, Convener, you opening up debate to the members of the committee. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henderson. Councillor McCabe, your 10 minutes starts now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Convener. Can I first express my thanks to you for considering this agenda item first? As you're aware, I have some personal business elsewhere, so I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Wee bit of history of the application. I was actually along to give my deputation at the May meeting, but it was continued because it was felt we could go to site. So the committee then went to site. My intention was to turn up here for the June meeting. Unfortunately, due to a flight delay of 24 hours, I was unable to attend. And then the matter was reconsidered for this month's meeting. But basically, where I'm coming from on this one, if I could perhaps ask Gemma if she could call up the small animation that I'd prepared. This is a planning in principle. So really what we should be looking for is just the most basic of outlines to see if the site can hold or can stand the construction of a single dwelling house. And now what I'd done is I'd prepared this. This has got nothing to do with the architects. This was just to give an idea of something of the size contained within the plot area. And within it, I've tried to address some of the concerns that were raised within the planning report as to do with overlooking privacy and things like that. There are ways that those questions can be mitigated. It's to do with the design of windows, and you'll see as the animation spins round, windows are elevated to a higher level. When we get round to what is the north face, the question of overlooking, you see it's a blank, but there are windows there rotated at 45 degrees to prevent overlooking either into the other property or looking into this property. All I'm making the committee aware of is that there are design solutions that are available there. I genuinely do feel that these are for a detailed application. This, in actual fact, is for a planning in principle. Now, it's fine that the committee have been out to actually physically see the site themselves and make themselves aware of it. I think that given the need for housing, we should be trying to maximise these kind of opportunities that become available. There's one wee thing that I can pick up and contain a couple of things within the report. The application site consists of a small former play park, which was purchased by the applicants in 2018. That's inaccurate. The applicants did not purchase the site in 2018. They've always had that plot within their ownership. I was a wee bit surprised again looking at the history of it, where the applicants had actually had to submit for a change of use. It's always been their property. It's always been within their tenure, shall I say. If I can then move to the recommendation, where we talk about its recommendation 1 and 2. The application does not accord with policy 14, design quality in place. The density, site layout and design of a proposed development will be addressed at the full application stage. I think what the committee should be considering is, can we go ahead and allow the architect, the applicant, to develop the design further, to allow them to come up with a design which answers any questions or concerns that the planning officers may have. Part 2 of the recommendation, it does not accord with policy of windfall housing. I believe it totally answers the question of windfall housing. Here is this wee kind of gap site where the proposal is to put a single dwelling house there. Residential amenity, it's already established, roads, access, waste drainage, water, power, shops, public transport, they all already exist. I genuinely do think this is just a really nice wee site here, which there are no real reasons to be refusing it, certainly at this stage. If approval was granted in principle and a subsequent application came in, and the questions raised by the concerns raised by planning officers were unable to be concerned, the committee or even the officers under delegated powers, they've got the power then to say, no, we're not going to approve this. If those answers aren't, if the questions aren't answered, I believe that the questions should be, I don't want to say delayed. Part of the process is that we have planning in principle that allows architects, developers to go ahead with a level of comfort to say that their proposal will be considered on the answering of the detailed design. I think that's all I really need to say on convener. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. It's open to members now to ask Councillor McCabe any questions arising from his submission. Councillor Kelly?
Steve. It states that there was a play area there. Why was there a play area if it was actually owned by the occupant of the other house?
It's a peculiar one, Councillor Kelly. I was aware of the site probably 10, 12 years ago, and you're quite right. That area of ground, someone actually put some play equipment on it. We can't get to the bottom of actually who it was, whether it was a council or whether it was a previous, estate developer, if you like. But the ground virtually lay unmaintained, certainly by the applicant, the Cothels. And there was a wee bit of dubiety over the ownership of it. But when Mr. and Mrs. Cuthell made some investigations, they found out, in actual fact, it did fall within their curtilage. There was a wee point made within the report that the council didn't maintain it. The council actually did maintain it. They went out and they cut the grass and whatever. I think there was, whether there was a climbing frame or a chute there or whatever. So whether that's been some locals round about who'd actually just put some play equipment on it, and it then became an ad hoc use, if you like, So that's a history, but I don't think anybody genuinely knows who actually installed that equipment. Peculiar one, Councillor. Hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you. Questions? Any further questions for Councillor McCabe? Either here or online? Bailey Kerr?
Thanks, convener. Councillor McCabe, thanks for your presentation. With regards to the ground in question, when did the applicant find out that it was his property?
Good question. Don't know if I know the answer, Bailey Kerr. What I do know is, because I specifically spoke to the Cuthels to say, did you purchase this in 2018? They definitely did not. They haven't purchased it other than when they bought the house. They have not paid any money for any extra land or whatever. Don't quote me on this, but I think it may have been that during that whole development by, I'll say Bet Homes or whoever had developed the site, I understand that there could have potentially been another play park designated for somewhere else, which the developer may have thought we could maybe maximise that and put another house on that. So therefore the question of this play park was kind of floated away, or, oh, wait a minute, here's a wee plot here. We could maybe do that. Again, don't quote me on that, please. I don't know the actual facts of it, but certainly within the, I'm sure I've got from the Register of Say-Scenes where it does actually show it is within the Cuthels curtilage, that area, that property.
I think going to visit for the site visit really helped understand the area in question. And if you go to probably any other site, new development site in Falkirk area, that would be classed as an open space left by the developers. However, if it's in the Cuttles plan for the start, obviously that's no part of it.
I again, through you, convener, what I'm saying, Billy Kerr, is I don't think anybody really knows the genuine history of it. But this is from the Register of Assassins, Land Register of Scotland, and this is the property. This is the Cuttles property here, and this is the wee plot that I'm talking about. So you can see that it is within the Cuttles curtilage. They have never purchased that plot independently. I hope that I may have muddied the water a wee bit.
No, that's fine. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Forrest.
Thanks. Just a couple of quick ones, if you don't mind. When did the couple purchase this land, this property?
I think it was 20 or 30 years ago, Councillor Forrest.
Right. And for all the time up until after the play park had gone, they weren't aware that they owned it?
There's an element of that.
Sorry, maybe did they object to the play park being there? Were there any objections to that being there? And if so, you know, did they complain about it?
Again, I honestly can't. They certainly didn't object to that their non-use of it, if you like, and it being utilised as a play park area. What I'm aware of is that where it gets a wee bit kind of complicated. Some neighbours were complaining that it wasn't being maintained by, and they were approaching the Cuttles to say, you need to cut that tree down, you need to cut that grass, you're not maintaining that, however. And I think the Cuttles were of the opinion, wait a minute, we don't. I think at that point they probably didn't think they owned it, you know. And it was only when they then made efforts to find out, is it our land, that the land register came back and said, yes, in actual fact, it is within your curtilage, you know, and that allowed them to obviously come forward with this. But as I'm saying, Councillor Forrest, previously, the council, as far as I'm aware, were maintaining it. They were cutting the grass and whatever, just making sure that the thing was okay for the kids to play in. Like, you know. So to answer your question, I suppose the Cuttles did not object to that area being an open space, if you like, you know. But again, it's the whole history of the thing.
Yeah. It's just, it seems a little strange to me because when I've purchased any of my houses, I've always read the deeds and looked at the maps, etc. And then for them to find out, oh, hold on, we own that.
Yeah.
And it's a good piece of land for them to use. So, yeah, it's just strange. That's all. Thank you.
I mean, it was, as I say, I don't know. I mean, probably the best people to be asking that would be the Cuttles themselves. But I'm aware that there was a wee bit of history, shall we say, between some neighbours and the Cuttles about you're not maintaining that land.
Always. That's what you call neighbours. Yeah. Thank you.
Just to say at this stage, I think I'll bring Mr. Henderson in because there have been a lot of questions in relation to the ownership of the ground. And in terms of the planning application that's in front of us, I'd just like some clarity legally for yourself, Mr. Henderson, for members.
Thank you, convener. And I think that's an interesting point to make, convener, that a party can make a planning application without owning a site, so ownership isn't ultimately determinative. And essentially the planning authority's function is to decide whether a development is desirable in the public interest rather than dealing with matters of ownership. Albeit as a property lawyer, it's been an interesting discussion. I think I've heard that there was an original title that was registered in the Register of Assassins around 1987 and a subsequent registration in 2018, which could indeed happen because in 1987 the land register had not yet been introduced for the area. It was introduced around 1993. So the original deed would have been recorded in the Register of Saysine, but there may have been a subsequent application in 2018 to enter the property into the land register, which is perfectly competent and quite sensible. So that may explain that divergence of one registration deed saying something different to the original deed at the point the property was acquired. But thank you, convener.
Well, thank you.
If I could just come in on that, convener, just to support what Mr. Henderson has said here. I have a letter here from the Register of Scotland, and I don't know if it's Jennifer Henderson, no relation, I'm sure.
But is this pertinent to what Mr. Henderson had just said?
It is.
Okay, then we're quite happy to allow you.
My name is Jennifer Henderson, Keeper of the Registers of Scotland, the government department responsible for recording land and property ownership in Scotland. We are working to support the Scottish Government's aim to complete a digital map-based land register for the whole of Scotland and, where possible, automatically updating properties onto this more modern register. It's a straightforward process, simply moving your property ownership information. You don't need to do anything, however, as we are working in your postcode area, moving property titles into the new map-based land register of Scotland. I wanted to update you personally and let you know how to find out more information. I would like to reassure you this change makes absolutely no difference to the ownership of your property, and within it, as I say, it contains this. I'm happy to give copies of that to the committee.
Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, convener. Can I just, Mr. Henderson gave us a nice little bit there. Can I do my usual, putting it into really simple terms and just ask if I'm understanding it correctly? That the ownership of the land is completely irrelevant to the actual deciding of this application. Is that right?
Thank you, Councillor Bowes. Yes, ownership is not the determining factor when the committee's making a decision on a planning application. It can be important from aspects of notification to owners if they're not the applicant and so on. But no, that wouldn't be a driving factor in your decision today. As I mentioned, it would be whether or not development would be desirable in the public interest, having regard to development plan and material considerations. Thanks, Councillor.
Unless, say, they own the land when they didn't own the land, and it's an offence under the 1974 Act.
Thank you, Bailey Kerr. I think what you're picking up on is something I just mentioned or alluded to, and that is notification of an owner when an application isn't made by the owner of the land, it's made by a third party. There is a requirement that an owner be notified. So that they're aware of an application affecting their property, potential impact on value, etc. of the property, and to give them an opportunity to submit representations, as they may not be nearby neighbours of land in any given situation. Thank you, Bailey Kerr. And indeed, I think your point is also that it can be an offence to recklessly and knowingly submit an application which doesn't correctly designate the ownership for notification purposes. Thank you.
Okay, then, any other questions from members at this stage? Councillor McCabe, I'm looking online here. None online. Any other members here have any other questions? None. Okay, Councillor McCabe, you can retake your seat, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. Thank you, committee.
We're going to go back now to our officer, Brent Vivian. Brent, you've heard the debate that's been going on, the questions have been asked, the summary from Councillor McCabe. Have you anything to add to your original summary?
Yeah, just a few things. Obviously, Mr. McCabe, Councillor McCabe had shown some animations in his presentation. That's not something we've we've seen or been in a position to consider or comment on. There was a design statement submitted as part of the application, but in terms of the things we would have liked the design statement to consider, we don't think the design statement really did that. We would have hoped for considerations around the principle of the development, which might include assessing the proposal against the plot sizes and plot ratios in the immediate locale, the characteristics of the development pattern in the area, including building lines and the spaces around buildings, how privacy standards can be met. There's a requirement for 18 meters between habitable windows that directly face each other. So we would have wanted some idea of where the habitable windows might be located on the house. Provision of adequate garden ground, and taking into account any off-site constraints, which I think in this case would include accommodating a root protection area for a tree which is on an adjacent property to the west. There's been quite a bit of discussion about the ownership. The agent had advised that the land belonging to had belonged to the applicant since pre-2019. So I think the reference to pre-2019 may have been in the context of the registration entry on the title dated 2018, which Mr. Henderson had touched on. So the clarification from Councillor McCabe regarding the 1987 date is helpful as background information, but fundamentally it doesn't have a bearing on the planning assessment or the recommendation. There was a comment about maintenance. Just to clarify, the information from asset management was that there's no current records that the council maintain the property. So, in terms of historical maintenance, that's not something that I'd readily be able to confirm or not. I think there's a reference also to a change of use. The key thing here is not in terms of how long the applicant might have owned the property, but the actual use of the land. I mean, if you look at the site, I think any reasonable person might conclude that it doesn't physically seem to form part of the garden ground for the property. That it looks as an unused open space area. So I think probably on that basis, that was the reason the applicant came forward in 2023 for an application for an actual change of use of open space to garden ground, notwithstanding that they may have actually owned the land in question. It's to do with the actual use and development in terms of how we would look at it in planning terms, and the basis for the change of use application, which was granted earlier this year. Yeah, I would point out that the actual loss of that area as open space is not fundamental to our assessment of the application. We don't fundamentally have an issue with the loss of that area as open space. I think that covers everything, Councillor. There was just Councillor McCabe had referred to one of the reasons for refusal, talking about residential amenity. It's not so much, just to clarify, it's not so much that there's not amenity established through the residential area. It's just whether a satisfactory degree of residential amenity could be achieved on this small plot. And I think that's in particular reference to safeguarding privacy on the new plot relative to the proximity to adjoining residences. And if you see from one of the photos, if Gemma could put it up again, there is the house to the north is at a higher level, and you can see that there is obviously a potential there for overlooking of any habitable windows that might face onto those windows, and also if the garden ground was located on that side of the property. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Brent. Brent, I'll just go back to your original summary in relation to what Councillor McCabe brought up, and you spoke about the animation. That was quite a very professionally done animation. You did mention the fact that there was a lot of information that wasn't forthcoming from the applicant. Did that have a big bearing on your recommendation then about the lack of information?
Well, that's right, Convener. Well, fundamentally, there is a concern in principle of whether the plot is large enough to accommodate a house, but certainly in terms of the design statement, we would have been looking for more information to try and demonstrate that some of the considerations under development plan policy in terms of density, site layout, and design and so forth would be able to be satisfied, and that there would be a reasonable level of comfort that when we get to the detailed planning stage, that an application could come forward that was able to achieve the relevant considerations under policy.
Thank you for that, Brent. Okay, I'm going to open it up for all members now. Daily Care.
Thanks, Convener. So, can we clarify if this is the garden ground of Mr. and Mrs. Cuttle? No bother who answers.
Well, and in planning terms, there was a planning permission granted January this year for a change of use of the open space to garden ground. So from a planning point of view, permission has been granted to use that space as garden ground. But I mean, my view on that at the moment, it's that permission's just in terms of when I last visited the site, which was with the committee at the end of May. There's no physical evidence at the moment that land has actually been incorporated within the garden or used for purposes consistent with its use as garden ground. So while there is a permission in place for the change of use at the moment, the planning permission is that it remains as vacant open space.
Right, thanks, Brent. I maybe didn't ask the right question there. Does Mr. and Mrs. Cuttle own that land before they applied for change of use?
Thank you, Convener. Bailey Kerr, I think there's a distinction here between ownership and the use of land. And what was being explained there is that a planning permission has been granted to change the use of the land to garden area, but Brent's indicating that change of use had not been implemented. You can own a piece of land, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can use it as garden area in connection with the house. And that would appear to be the situation here, that the applicants owned the piece of land, but it wasn't used as garden area. And that's a separate question. The use and the ownership are two distinct things.
But what does it matter if they use it for garden? They own it, do they know?
That's the point I'm making, is that they can own a piece of land, but to use it as garden required a planning permission, change of use.
Okay, I take your word on that, but I didn't see it. If I think it's irrelevant if they own it, what they use it for. If I've got a bit of ground, it's not to do with you what I use that bit of ground for.
Bailey Kerr, it might not be to do with me, but
I know. I'm not getting on you,
planning terms, in
Bernadette.
terms of the planning position, you can own a piece of land. That doesn't mean that you can do whatever you like with that piece of ground. The use of the land may require an application for planning permission to change its use.
Was it a case that the council didn't know that they owned that piece of land?
I'm
Don't know.
not familiar with the detail of the ownership. Obviously, that's a point that Mr. Henderson has commented on, and Councillor McCabe has given some commentary on as well. But it comes back to the point also in terms of the assessment of the planning application. You know, the point is advised and mentioned also by Councillor Bowes. The principle, what you're looking at is the principle of development of the land, not the ownership of the land. There's a distinction there.
Okay, so I understand that. I've been there loads of times before, and I do understand that. So we have went from a change of use from open space to garden ground. That's been granted, but it's not been implemented. So what would they have to have done to implement that in the me garden ground?
You can come in there as well, Bailey Kerr. It's a detailed planning permission for change of use of the land to garden area, and it includes enclosure of that land. So fencing, that kind of thing. I haven't got the application in front of me, but it's a detailed approval showing how the use is to be implemented.
Okay. Right, fine. I'm still on the same view as the representation by Councillor McCabe, where I didn't think they needed to change it to. They already owned that ground. I didn't think they needed to change it to from open space, because it wasn't open space, it was their ground. However, moving on then, if the applicant decided to erect a man cave in that piece of ground in his back garden, would they need plan permission, or would they get it under permitted development?
So I think there's a couple of steps here. So there's a planning permission being granted to change the use of the land to garden area, which we're hearing hasn't been implemented yet. Once that permission has been implemented, then the permitted development rights for buildings within garden area would apply. So whether a building could be erected on that land would depend on the conditions in the general permitted development order in relation to the size of buildings, location in relation to boundaries, all those kind of points being complied with.
Okay, thanks. Another great answer. Can you put up the, who's got the slideshow, Chairman? Can you put up the last photograph that Brent was looking at? With the garden, where you see the garden ground with the. Yes, thanks, Chairman. So how wide is that footpath? Do we know? Because there were comments that it would cause issues for school children going to school If the applicant brought forward their application for changing the garden ground and put a fence up there, I would say that hedge is causing more problem than the fence, because it's out in the footpath. So if they erected a fence, forget the house, but erect a fence to enact the application for turning it into garden ground, would that cause a problem?
I can't confirm the width of the pavement, but as part of the change of use approval, there was provision for a fence along that edge, I think to a height of 1.5 meters. So there is approval for a fence along the edge of the footpath.
Would it cause a problem with a fence being up there? Do we know?
Sorry, Bailey, can you repeat the question? I didn't hear what you said there.
Looking at that photograph, and you see the curve where the grass goes with the applicant's ground, they erected a fence there. Would that cause a problem for children to get to school? Bearing in mind the width, I couldn't tell you if you hear what that width is, but the hedge at this side seems to be well maintained but overgrown in the footpath, because it states in, I don't know if it's the report or the supplement for Councillor McCabe, that objectors are saying that it would cause a problem for children walking to school if a fence was erected.
Well, the fence wouldn't. Sorry, Bernard, you go.
Sorry, Bailey Kerr, obviously the planning permission for the change of use has been granted. That's a determined application. What members are being asked to consider today is the separate application for the principle of building a house on this piece of land. Potentially you're saying there will be a crossover in considerations there as to whether what's been granted could also have an impact on the use of that footpath. But that permission for the change of use of the land has already been granted.
I understand that, Bernard. It wasn't that big application I was talking about. I was talking about this application that we're in front of us, saying that when a fence is erected, it would cause a health and safety issue for the children who go to school. Not to do with the garden ground in this application. Is that the case?
I see the point you're making, Councillor Bailey Kerr. I think the issue is the same issue would apply. That potentially that would, the permission that's been granted and the application that's before you could have impacts on that footpath, on the use of that footpath.
That's all I wanted. Thank you very much.
Councillor Bowes, Councillor Forrest.
Thank you. Yeah, it was an interesting site visit. It is a compact, we'll call it, site. I think it's probably fair to say. I could take a wee bit forward in where Councillor Kerr was. I'm not concerned about the path, because I think it's actually during construction work, and I'm afraid when you're doing construction work you're going to get closed paths during construction work. I would hope that it would be opened and cleared at the right width post construction work, whether that was putting in the garden fence or actually building anything else on it. If, as it stands, and it's pretty obvious at the moment that this bit of land is now in the ownership of this person, and then they could have went through, I think was it Bailey Kerr said, the permitted development rights. Under permitted development rights, would they need to be going through what they're doing just now? Or would they just put in a full planning application under permitted development rights and it would have been dealt with through that?
Councillor Bowers, if the planning permission for the change of use of land was implemented, then permitted development rights in relation to householder development would apply to that land. The applicants wouldn't need to implement permitted development rights for development. They wouldn't need to come to the council for confirmation of a proposal being permitted development. They could apply for a certificate of lawfulness to be assessed by the council. But if somebody is confident that what they're proposing to do complies with the permitted development rights, they're not formally required to come back and seek confirmation.
So I'm assuming, I don't know, it's not to do with this committee, but sure, all they would require is a building warrant then.
If a building warrant is required.
Councillor Forrest and then Councillor Nimmo.
Thank you. Thanks, Convener. That same piece of land that Bailey Kerr has just been pointing out for the footpath, is that not also a land for vehicular access? In which case the vehicles would be crossing over the footpath in and access to the housing.
If you could-
Brent.
Yeah,
You got
there's
that,
there's an indicative site plan which shows the proposed vehicular access to the plot. If we can bring up the indicative site plan. It's the other drawing. So the vehicular access would be from a new drop curb onto the existing turning head to provide a space for an access for a car to one parking space. So it doesn't affect the existing pavement further to the right.
So I'm right. At some point, vehicles would have to cross the footpath, and it would be irrelevant whether that footpath is partially obscured by vegetation, i.e. the hedge, or whether it was a fence. At some point, there is going to be cars crossing across that, and it's going to be used probably at the same time as children going to school. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nimmo.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I'll be quick. It's already been mentioned, but I don't see a potential fence being an issue here. And again, it's been mentioned as well, the hedge is a big issue. It's taken up half of the public footpath, and that shouldn't be like that. The council should have been instructing the house owner to cut that hedge back to make that path a viable way to walk. The width of the public footpath is an issue at the moment, and it just doesn't seem to be getting dealt with. And why has the council allowed this to keep going? I don't have a problem with the officer's recommendation in respect to this application, but it seems a bit funny why we're having to deal with this footpath, a potential fence, and an overgrown hedge that nobody's dealt with. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you for your input, sir. Councillor Sinclair.
Thanks, Convener. I think I'll bring it back to the same question. from what I can see, and I didn't attend the sites, but from what I can see, based on the maps, the images that have been put up, and the helpful Google Earth that we've all got on our laptops, it speaks to me this site in particular is incredibly tight, and the distances. I wouldn't be confident that a building of the sort that's been proposed within the application that's in front of us, I can't see how that would fit in that site in that way. And I understand that we're talking about planning permission in principle here, but it's not striking me as a site that would be suitable for what's in front of me. And I'm not 100% sure how that would look, not only within the area that it's in, but also the impact that it has on the neighbouring property. And looking at the Registers of Scotland website, there's no question of the ownership of the land. There is a question over the boundary of that land, however, because there is a boundary line between that land, which is currently open space, with the change of use permission. But how that impacts on the totality of the property and the site itself, that's where I'm coming down on this. I think that there's far more questions than answers, because it would appear to me that the report, the application, the report is written to the application, which doesn't have all of the information included that would make this easier for us to make that determination. So that's where I currently stand on that position. Thank you.
Thank you for your input, Councillor Sinclair. Any other member want to come in at this time? No. Okay. We've heard the submission from the local member, Councillor McCabe. We've heard the questions and answers from our officers. How do members feel about this application? Councillor Sinclair.
Convener, I'd be content to move the officer recommendations within the report.
Okay, thank you.
Second that, please.
Certainly. Bailey Kerr.
I'd like to put an amendment to that then. That as planning permission in principle, and anything that is comes forward, we're saying density and size. We don't know what size of house is going in there, because it's only a planning permission in principle. It could come back that the house fits, the windows didn't overlook. It's a planning permission in principle. So I'm quite happy that we grant the planning permission in principle, and the detailed planning officers can work with applicant, and if that can't be their satisfactory answer, comes back to committee.
Okay. Bring in Mr. Henderson at this stage.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks, Bailey Kerr. No, I think at this point, what the committee would want to do, and I think what you're saying is that you would think that a single-storey, one-building dwelling house would be able, through a detailed application, to respect the townscape character of the area, and would be able to achieve a satisfactory level of residential amenity. I say that as I think what Brent was trying to say was there's almost a sense that if you grant PPP, that's the committee doesn't consider is able to be dealt with at a detailed stage. That's where there may be an issue. But I think your motion would be that you would wish to grant planning permission in principle, having considered the report, the material considerations of the development plan, and you don't think it's contrary to the plan in that you think it would be able to accommodate a house and meet the townscape character and would be able to achieve an appropriate degree of amenity. sorry to sort
Yeah.
of draw through that, but is that what you would be saying?
Yes.
Essentially, in terms of the motion, and presumably delegating to the Director of Police
Yeah.
Services, who's with us today,
Yeah.
to impose appropriate conditions. Just in terms of the report, I think there were specific mention of conditions that would be appropriate, no doubt, in relation to detailed matters, but also vehicular access, formation of driveway, and siting biodiversity and low and zero carbon development.
Correct.
Apologies for
that's
speaking
fine.
so long, Bailey Kerr.
Mr Henderson, we didn't implement the planning permission in principle theory. We only been dealt with it, but the planning permission in principle, as you know, is an outline drawn of a site, and it's whether we think that it can be achieved. And I know every application is taken on merit, but in previous plan permission and principle applications, we're asking applicants for reports that's thousands of pounds, and it's only a plan permission and principle. I'm glad that Brent hasn't done this time, but I'm happy with your summary.
Colley?
Yeah, I actually just wanted to come in and say that I on that basis, I would feel happy to second that amendment.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other member at this stage? Councillor Bowes.
Thank you. Just for clarity, so if we grant the planning permission in principle, they have to go to a full planning application. Whereas if we don't apply it, they could be dealing with this through, if they put up a fence and cut the grass, cut the weeds for what we could see when we were there. They could actually be looking to deal with it through permitted developments. Am I right?
Bernard.
Thanks, Councillor Bowes. If a planning permission in principle is granted for the proposal before you, they would need to come back with an application, a further application for the matters specified in the conditions of that planning permission in principle. Second and separate to that, if they choose to implement the planning permission for the change of use of the land, if they then wanted under permitted development rights to do other development on that land, provided that it's in accordance with permitted development rights, they could go ahead. What the permitted development rights would not allow them to do with the change of use of the land is build a house on that land.
Okay. Okay then, is there anybody else wanting at this stage? Just to clarify, we have a motion moved and seconded to agree the recommendation contained within the report. We have an amendment from Bailey Kerr, seconded by Councillor Colley, in relation to granting this application. Anybody else like to come in before we go to the vote? Anybody online? No. Okay, Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Convener. So we have a motion by Councillor Sinclair, seconded by Councillor Forrest, and that is in accordance with the officer recommendations to refuse the grant of planning permission in principle. And we have an amendment by Bailey Kerr, and that's been seconded by Councillor Colley. And from the notes I've been taking, I would summarise that as the committee, having considered the officer report, the development plan and material considerations, and having exercised its planning judgment, agrees to grant planning permission in principle as it considers the development is not contrary to the development plan on the basis that a single-storey, one-bedroom dwelling house would be able to respect the townscape character of the area in this case, and would be able to achieve a satisfactory level of residential amenity. And no doubt that was having particular regard to the proximity of the dwelling house to the western site boundary. and that the committee agrees to delegate the imposition of appropriate conditions to the Director of Police Services, which would include conditions in relation to detailed application, vehicular access, formation of the driveway and sightlines, biodiversity and low and zero carbon development. So on the basis of a roll call vote, Provost Bissett is absent. Councillor Bowes.
Amendment.
And Convener Bailey Buchanan.
Amendment.
Councillor Colley.
Amendment.
Councillor Flynn.
Amendment.
Councillor Forrest.
Motion.
Councillor Kelly.
Amendment.
Bailey Kerr.
Amendment.
Councillor Murtagh is absent. Councillor Nimmo.
Motion.
Councillor Redmond's absent. And Councillor Sinclair.
Motion.
And following the vote, we have 3 votes for the motion and 6 votes for the amendment, and the amendment is duly carried. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for that. It was a good debate. That takes us now to item 5 on your agenda this morning, the Falkirk Council on-street parking space for disabled persons. And at this stage, Councillor Bowes, who's already declared an interest, shall leave the room. Thank you, sir. The Falkirk Council on-street parking space for disabled persons, various streets, number 10, order 20, Balmoral Place, Stennismuir, continuation because it was the subject of a site visit. And could I say at this stage, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. It was a very well attended site visit, and I'm sure that everybody would have a benefit from going out there. The report is by Craig Russell, and we'd like to carry on now, Craig. Thank you. Craig, before we start your report, could you maybe just tell, because there are people online this morning that will know the reason why this application and other applications come before committee? Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. I'll certainly detail that in my update report this morning. Members will recall that this application was originally considered by the Planning Committee on the 12th of June this year, when it was agreed to continue the application for a site visit. As you mentioned, Convener, this took place on Monday, the 12th of August this year. At the site visit, questions were asked by members of the committee. No issues were raised which would alter the officer's recommendation. Just to recap the original report, this concerns an application for a disabled person's parking space on Balmoral Place, Stenhousemuir. In terms of the Council's scheme of delegation, this decision requires to be made by committee, as an unresolved objection has been received to the making of the order. In terms of the relevant legislation, the authority requires to consider all objections made and not withdrawn before making the order. An application was received by a qualifying person and a suitable location was identified for the space. This is shown on page 6 of your report. One objection was received and responded to, as detailed on pages 8 and 9 of your report. The objection has not been removed, hence this report being placed before you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, open it up. Bailey Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. I think visiting the site was very useful. You didn't usually get any controversy with these applications, and you didn't usually get many objections. But in this paper, we've got 3. In looking at the application, and we visited it, and 2 or 3 elected members point out, and I totally agree with, I can't remember if it was Councillor Sinclair or Councillor Bowes, if you moved if you moved the bay 4 or 5 feet, it would allow the car in the corner not to get blocked and they'll still be able to use it. I think not knowing where the person who was lived didn't help, because we didn't know if it was right outside their house or if it was further down. So for enabling all to be satisfied, I think a simple moving the bay 4 or 5 feet in my eyes would allow everybody a satisfactory answer.
Bailey Kerr, I'm going to go back to Craig. Craig, you've heard what Bailey Kerr has been saying. At this particular stage, I think it would be invaluable for you just to explain the situation if members were going to agree to Bailey Kerr for this, how this would fit in with the application before us just now.
Certainly, convener. Yeah, it wouldn't be as simple as relocating the bay. Certainly, we could do that. However, in order to do that, we'd have to abandon the current order that's before you and propose a new order. That can certainly be done. There's obviously there's a time issue, and that would have to arrange for the council's contractor to go out, burn off the space that's been marked, shift the space further along, then go through the order process again. It's all procedural, and it could all be carried out, convener.
Okay. The Kerr would just explain the situation if members were going to agree to what you're saying, if you're going to move that. I think it's important that members do realise this order would be null and void and you have to come forward with a new order, as Craig has said.
I'm not moving in at the moment, convener, but I would like clarification. Probably Craig. When an order comes in, why do we go and do the bay before it's agreed? Because as soon as you go and do it, people think they've agreed it. And it's not even been agreed yet the bay is already there. It's happened in the 2 in Fairley Street as well. I don't know if it's in the legislation or no, but I just wondering why we're doing bays before we're even decided it's getting agreed. Because now we'll need to go and get a contractor. We've paid somebody to put it in. We're going to have to take somebody to take it out and put it in again.
Back to you, Craig.
Thanks, convener. It's a good question by Bailey Kerr, and yes, it is a requirement of the legislation. The legislation requires that we identify a suitable place, a suitable parking place for the applicant and mark it as soon as possible. Now, as Bailey Kerr mentioned, that marking is advisory until such time as the follow-on order is made. That order can take a number of months to go through the process. If it, for example, today there's a few of them at planning committee. If it goes to planning committee, site visit, etc., these orders can drag on. But it is a requirement of the legislation that we identify and provide that advisory space as soon as we can.
You, Craig.
If it's legal, it's legal, but I just think it's madness.
Yep. Okay, I'm opening it up to other members here. Councillor Kelly.
From my memory of this position, if we moved that 4 or 5 feet up, it would leave another parking space where the original one was. So somebody else can go and park there, and that's going to block that corner that the car was sitting in. I don't see it's going to really make any difference. It's still going to have any extra parking or anything like that.
Okay, Councillor Sinclair. Thanks, Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, convener. I'm not sure if we would have this information to hand, but do we know if by moving the parking space that's identified here and the one that we visited, do we know that by moving that it wouldn't have an impact on the applicant?
Great.
I don't think I could say with any certainty that whether moving it would have an impact on the applicant or not, convener. What I would say, when we when we identify locations for applicants, what we do is survey the site and we try to provide the space in the location that the vehicle was observed parking in. That was the situation in this particular example that committee's considering this morning. The vehicle was observed at several site visits parking in the location that we have provided the bay. Just on Councillor Kelly's point, if I could share my screen just briefly, convener, I'll show a view from Google Street View. Now, this is not the most recent view. I think this is from 2009, but it illustrates the point that Councillor Kelly just made. There's no, this location here where this blue vehicle is parked is approximately the location of the bay that you're considering this morning. As you can see in the photo, there's no bay there. There's clearly a vehicle parked there, and there's also a vehicle clearly parked diagonally in the corner. So whether the bay's there or not, this appears to be the practice of residents in that area.
Thanks for that, Craig. Very helpful. Anybody else like to come in at this stage? Councillor Flynn.
Yep, thank you, convener. I do agree moving it 4 or 5 foot to the right or whatever would allow another vehicle to park there. It might even allow the vehicle that is parked diagonally in the corner to park there. Who knows? The one thing I did notice on the site visit, which was really useful, convener, was the fact that the marking of the bay, and Craig will be able to validate this for me, some of it was on sort of, I would call, gravel or not very good tarmac ground, and it was degrading already. And that would be a concern for me leaving the bay where it is at the moment, because I would guess that within a matter of months, one half of the bay, the marking would be all degraded, etc., and that might have an impact on other people parking or, you know, allowing that. I don't know if Craig could answer that, please. Thanks.
Craig?
Yeah, I think Councillor Flynn's observations are obviously valid and accurate. If we apply a marking on ground that isn't sound, the marking won't last as long as if the ground was sound. You know, the marking, I don't have the budget for road maintenance, unfortunately, so I suspect there isn't enough budget to resurface everywhere before the marking is applied.
So would it be then a benefit moving it, you know, that 4 or 5 foot anyway? So there'd be a double benefit. It would allow whatever car wants to park in the corner, but more importantly, would allow sound marking and save money longer term by having it on sound ground, you know, the tarmac that's already there.
Yep, I understand the point you're making, Councillor Flynn. Unfortunately, I don't. My recollection of the ground surrounding the particular space isn't quite as clear as yours. I'm not sure if moving it, you know, 3-4 meters in one direction would land it on better quality ground than where it is at the moment, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, convener.
Thank you for your input, Councillor Flynn. Going back to any other members like to come in at this stage? No. Well, just to clarify where we are, there is a recommendation contained within your agenda report, but we're asked to consider the terms of the report, including the objection, and determine whether the order should be made. Is there any member like to come forward? Well, at this stage, Councillor Kelly.
I'll move that we leave the space where it is at the moment.
So you're happy to say that the order should be made. I'm quite happy to second you. Anybody else coming in at this stage? Bailey Kerr.
I agree with the order with yourselves, but I have got concerns with what Councillor Flynn mentioned about the road. The road isn't up to standard, and that will eradicate the lines. So it's probably nothing for to do with the line, but this application, but it will deteriorate and it maybe cause problems in the future.
Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, convener. It was just to clarify. I've noted here that we have a motion now by the Deputy Convener, Councillor Kelly, seconded by you, Bailey Buchanan. And I think that would be along the lines that the committee, having considered the report and the objections and being satisfied as to the location for the parking space, agrees to make the order.
Yep.
Thank you, convener.
Happy with that. Okay, is there anybody otherwise minded at this stage? Everybody's agreed. Okay, thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. That takes us now to item 6 on your agenda, replacement of windows at Oakdean 2 Churchwynd, Bowness for Mr. M. Smith. The report is by Julie Seidel Gregory and it's pages 25 to 31 on your agenda papers. And we're now rejoined by Councillor Bowes. Thank you, sir. Julie.
Thank you, Convener. This application relates to the replacement of windows at 2 Churchwynd and Bowness. Gemma, are you able to show the drawings? And there's some photographs as well. The application property is a flatted dwelling within Bowness Town Centre Conservation Area. The development relates to the removal of 3 sash and case windows. No detailed specification for the proposed windows have been submitted, but reference is made to installation of plastic casement windows. The windows serve a rear stairwell, which is visually prominent from the A706 Churchwynd, which is one of the main southern approaches to the town centre. This application was called in by Councillor Jack Redmond. There are no consultation responses which were carried out and no representations were received. The existing windows are timber sash and case. Overall, there's a lack of information submitted with this application. For instance, there is no conditions survey to demonstrate the need for full replacement or detailed drawings including sections for the proposed windows. Reference is made to the replacement windows being plastic casement windows, which would not match the design, materials or method of opening of the original windows. The submitted elevation drawings show that the design and proportions would be unsympathetic and would fail to retain built features which contribute to the character and setting of the conservation area. The application is assessed as being contrary to the development plan, and it's recommended that the Planning Committee refuse planning permission for the reason detailed at section 9 of your report. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much for summarising, Julie. Going to open it up to members. Fairly care.
Julie, see the Gemma, can you just put the photos back up, please? See the windows. Did you say it's 3 windows altogether? See the elevation at the front, Gemma?
Some of the photographs that were provided show parts of the building which are not being altered. So if you can scroll down, Gemma, please.
That, can I just comment on that one? See that building at the top, is that the same building?
The part that we're interested in
Yes.
is to the rear. So this building was originally a public house, some members may recall, on the ground floor, which was converted a number of years ago. And then so there's flats now to the lower, the ground floor level, and also to the first floor level. So this building is concerned with windows to the rear. And if you scroll down again, Gemma, you should be able to get, yep, so that shows you the side elevation from Churchwynd, and that's the first window. And if you scroll down again, there should be another photograph that's from the inside. And again, there you go. So this is the main elevation that we're interested with. You can see there that projecting element, which is the part of the building close to members. You can see that there are 3 windows there, 1 on either side, and 1 to the rear. It's those windows.
That's the one going down the stairs.
Yeah.
I'm still interested in that front, the very first photo, because through time, right at the corner, is that the same flat, or is that a different flat?
There's different flats
Right, okay.
that you may be
That's
looking at there. The windows on the ground floor of the building are timber sash and case. I do recall dealing with that application some time ago. There are other windows on that building which are not timber sash and case, and that there may well be windows on there which are plastic, which do not benefit from planning permission.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking.
Thanks.
Right, thanks.
Okay, any other member at this stage? I would agree with the report in terms of the fact is that the Windows server rear stairwell, which is visually prominent from the A706 Church Wynd, which is one of the main southern approaches to the conservation area. And I think that was highlighted by the photograph we've just seen. So I'm quite happy at this stage to move the recommendation contained within the report, and that's to refuse the application.
Happy to second.
Anybody otherwise minded, either here or online? Have we agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much for that. That takes us to item 7, but before we do that, I think we'll have a comfort break. 5 or 10 minutes, okay? Thank you very much. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll now reconvene. That takes us to item 7 on your agenda this morning, which is construction of dwelling house at Victoria House, Brayface Road, Banknock, Bonnybridge for Mr. Archie Hockey. It's pages 32 to 40 on your agenda papers, and the report is by Julie Seidel-Gregory. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Convener. Gemma, could you maybe show the site plan and the site photographs if you're able to? Thanks. This application relates to the development of a detached dwelling house at Victoria House in Banknock. This application relates to an amendment to house type for planning permission P19-0190 full. The development forms plot 3 of a 3-house development. Members may recall considering the original application and another amendment at the wider site. The site history is detailed at section 3 of your report. No issues in principle are raised by consultees and no representations were received. This application is referred to Planning Committee for determination as the application is assessed as being contrary to the development plan. The full policy assessment is detailed at section 7A of your report. In this particular case, the planning history of the site is considered to provide sufficient justification and weight for the development being granted planning permission in this instance. This is on the basis of the principle of development being established on site and the design changes being considered acceptable. It's recommended that the Planning Committee grant planning permission in accordance with the conditions detailed at section 9 of your report. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Julie. I remember going out and site to this one some time ago. Okay, we're going to open it up for members. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Convener. I do remember this for 2019, obviously. And I've got to say, it's the 3 houses were approved. It's a change in style, design more than anything else. And I know it's a bit early to do this because there's obviously been more debate, but I'm going to put a motion to accept the officer's recommendations.
Councillor Kelly.
Sorry, I'm quite happy to accept that. I've been up and had a look at it and I don't see any reason not to.
And I would concur with you. I'm opening it up for the rest of the members though. We've got a motion moved and seconded to agree the recommendation contained within the report. Bailey Kerr.
Just a quick question, Julie. With regards to, you mentioned the reason why you're outweighs the local development plan. Can you just specify that again for me?
So the application is assessed as being, it's quite a strong assessment of being contrary to the development plan in this case in relation to the principle of rural housing development and other issues including things like sustainable travel, 20-minute neighbourhoods. In this case, this is plot 3 of a 3-house development which is granted planning permission. Other houses are developed on site. If this application was refused, the owner of the site or any future owner could build the house that was originally granted planning permission. So it's considered that there would be no benefit in refusing this application based on the concerns that are raised through the policy assessment.
That's the bit I was wanting to get. Thank you very much.
That was a good question and it was a good answer. Fine. Okay then, just to clarify the position we're at the moment, we have a motion moved and seconded to agree the recommendation contained within the report. Is there anybody either here or remote otherwise minded?
Agreed.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Takes us to item 8 on your agenda this morning. Display of non-illuminated advertisement at Bean Cross, West Bean Cross Farm, Pullman for Bean Cross Investment Limited. It's pages 41 to 47 on your agenda papers and the report is by Julie Seidel-Gregory again. Thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Convener. Gemma, for this one, you could show the site photographs and then the drawing. There's one composite drawing that should have all the information that members need here. So this application relates to the display of a non-illuminated advertisement at the junction of the A9 to the former Bean Cross Farm. The junction is in a very busy location serving several commercial properties including hotels, restaurants and a children's day nursery. The proposal relates to a 5.1 metre high advertisement comprising of a 4.1 metre high concrete pillar with a proposed stone cobble finish and inset logo and a 1 metre high logo above. This application is a resubmission of P240208 ADV, which was recently refused. This current application shows the sign being slightly repositioned at the site. So we're just going to pull up the plan here in a wee second. And if you could maybe zoom in slightly on the elevation of this, it's a slightly unusual design for this proposed sign. The application is called to the consideration of the Planning Committee by Councillor Jack Redmond. The Town and Country Planning Control of Advertisements Scotland regulations directs that the control of advertisements shall be exercisable only in the interests of amenity and public safety. In this case, the Roads Development Unit recommend that this application be refused. The response is detailed at section 4 of your report. In terms of public safety, it's considered that the proposed advertisement would not have suitable regard for persons who may use the surrounding road network. The A9 at this location is a very busy strategic route which is known to have recorded personal injury accidents, and it's considered that the new road arrangement, which many members will now be familiar with, makes this location even more complicated and distracting for drivers navigating the location. Concerns are raised in relation to the potential for the proposed advertisement to lead to driver distraction in a location where drivers' full attention should be on the road and the conditions prevalent. Additionally, the advertisement includes the construction of a large concrete pillar which does not meet passive safety requirements for roads. Passively safe structures are designed to provide less resistance during impact, reducing the severity of any impact and injury sustained. Collision with the proposed structure could result in significant impact. The Roads Development Coordinator is on hand at this meeting to answer any technical questions that members may have. It's recommended that the Planning Committee refuse planning permission for the reason detailed at section 9 of your report. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Julie. Bringing in Councillor Nimmo. He's got his hand up there. Councillor Nimmo.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. It's just a quick point in relation to the heading for this item. It's listed as Bean Cross Polmont, but it's stated below that there's no community council. As far as I'm aware, Polmont Community Council is still in operation, and it seems as if they haven't been consulted on this.
I'll bring in Councillor Forrest at this stage, maybe shed some light on this.
Thank you for that. I think what it is, the community council is based on postcodes, etc. And there is, at the top of the road, certainly, at the top of the Grant Sable, there is the boundary for the community council. Although some of the houses are still technically in Polmont, they're not covered by the community council. And I think that's what the problem is there. I believe that it's the same just down the bottom. I know I grew up in Grangemouth, live in Polmont now, and I know that that has always been the boundary area, the old Trout Corner.
Okay, thank you for that. Do you want to continue, Councillor Nimmo?
I'm not doubting what Councillor Forrest has just said there, but could I maybe get officers just to clarify that as well?
Convener, can I just come in and support it? Probably Councillor Nimmo, because we've had it when the distillery was up for application. The community council got notified. When Cadgers Bray was doing something, the community council got notified. When the big garden centre, they are notified by the community council. So I'm in agreement with Councillor Nimmo that they get notified for that area. Councillor Forrest right regarding the boundaries for the postcode, but in previous years, as Councillor Nimmo know, because he was at the Council for Lower Braes, they get notified for that area.
Thank you, Convener.
I think we'll bring in Julie, just to try and clarify the situation.
Thank you, Convener. what's pulled through in the report is a geographical link to whatever community council would fall within the geographical area for any planning application. So that can be a bit of an issue for applications that are in more rural areas and where the boundary falls. Notwithstanding that's more a sort of technical and procedural issue which comprises our reports. Notwithstanding that, no community councils are consulted on any planning applications. They get a copy of the weekly list, and it's up to the community councils to have a look at that weekly list and either ask to be consulted or to make comments on any applications they have an interest in. So this application will have been made aware to any community councils, Grangemouth or Pullman or any other active community council, and if they took an interest in that particular application, they could make comment on it, which was not the case here.
Thanks for that, Julie, simplifying it. Councillor Nimmo, anything else to say?
No, that's fine, Convener. I'm satisfied with the explanation.
Okay, thank you. Going back to this, to the application itself, I would totally agree with the recommendation contained. We should all know this area very well, and it's always been a dangerous area at the best of times. And I think that that officers are quite right for their recommendation to refuse, because I do believe it's in the best interest of public safety that this doesn't go up. Thank you. Councillor Forrest.
I'd like to second that. Convener, I couldn't agree with Julie's assessment more. It is a very, very busy junction. I use it probably 3-4 times a day. Could I also add, though, that in the recent improvements to it, I feel the road is far, far better. It's far clearer.
Yeah.
However, the last thing that we need is any distractions for drivers. I would also like to thank the roads department who did the planning of that, and the people who carried it out.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, Bailey Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. In your summary, Julie, you mentioned about the new layout. Does the road, is it better, the road being a 40 restriction in regards to the sign, or was it better when it was a normal national limit?
I think this would be a good point to bring in Mr. Russell, who can give us a technical response to that one.
Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Convener, and thanks, Julie. I'm not sure how to answer Councillor Kerr's question. You asked Councillor Kerr if it was better when it was a higher speed limit or a lower speed limit. I think if I take first of all from the perspective of hitting the sign, and bear in mind that this is a 5 metre high concrete sign surrounded by and stones. If somebody was to hit that at 60 miles an hour, you know, the severity of injury would clearly be worse than if they hit it at 40 miles an hour. In terms of the visibility requirement at the junction, that is less now as a result of the reduced speed limit than it was when the speed limit was higher. So you know, in terms of distraction, I couldn't answer that. I couldn't tell you whether a driver would be likely to be more distracted at 60 or less just distracted at 60, I'm afraid.
Right, okay, Craig. Good answer. Probably agree with the Convener and Councillor Forrest on the views of Craig's answer there about it being a concrete structure. I don't think it would matter if you were going at 60 or 40. If you hit that structure head on, it would could be fatal. However, I would just like to say is no all these signs, advertisement signs, are bad. I just didn't think this is suitable for that area, and probably more the construction of the sign rather than the sign, because There was one refused for Graham's Road not that long ago, and I phoned up and asked the officer what was the reason, and he explained, and I thought, fine. And for then, I've noticed hundreds of them when I'm driving, just because it was highlighted before. So you're looking and you're going, oh, that's the kind of thing that would be there. And does it put me off by looking at it? No. However, there will be areas where it does. I'm just trying to highlight that not all luminous signs are bad. Thanks.
Okay, just to clarify where we are, we've got a motion moved and seconded to agree the recommendation contained within the report. Is there anybody either here or remote otherwise minded?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. Thanks, Julie. Okay, then that takes us to item 9 on your agenda. The Falkirk Council on-street parking space for disabled persons, various street number order 20, pages 48 to 55, and the report is by our officer, Craig Russell. Thank you, Craig.
Thanks again, convener. Apologies, some of this will be a repetition from the report you heard earlier. Once again, this report concerns an application for a disabled person's parking space on Fairley Street, Camelin. In terms of the Council scheme of delegation, this decision requires to be made by committee as an unresolved objection has been received to the making of the order. In terms of the relevant legislation, the authority requires to consider all objections made and not withdrawn before making the order. An application was received by a qualifying person and a suitable location was identified for the space. This is shown on page 52 of your report. One objection was received and responded to. This is detailed on pages 54 and 55. The objection has not been removed, hence this report being placed before you.
Okay, thank you, Craig. We're opening it up for members now. Fairly Care.
Thanks, convener. I know I know each application needs to be done in its own contents, but these two applications in the same street. This one, item 9 and item 10, are they in the same street?
Convener, I'll answer that. Yes, they are. Bailey Care, they're on the same street and they are in relatively close proximity to one another. They are separate applications.
Yeah. For anybody that knows Fairley Street, it's a bus route. Very, very busy street. Very busy street. And I would say parking is at a premium, like loads of other streets in the Falkirk area. However, the objections that were submitted are valid objections, I think. However, in terms of policy, I think Craig and his team have answered the questions. If we don't approve these, there'll still be 2 cars there anyway. So it's not going to take 2 cars off the street. So well, a question for Craig. The objectors, have you any, apart from the I take it online objection, do you have any conflab with any objectors when these are submitted, Craig?
Through you, convener, that depends, Bailey Kerr. Sometimes, yes, there can be telephone discussions with objectors. Other times, it'll be an emailed objection and a response from the team, and that'll be the end of it. In this particular disabled space application that we're considering here, there was one objection to this one. The next item, there were several objections to the next space. So the number of objections, the method of communication between the objectors and the teams, it can vary between application.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, just to clarify the situation, I'm going to go to Councillor Flynn in a minute, as it we're dealing with the item 9 specifically. Councillor Flynn.
Yep, thank you, convener. My question is straightforward. The objector mentions that the disabled space is seldom or rarely used. I just wonder what the perspective was here from, obviously, a roads perspective. You know, I can see somebody getting planning permission or getting a disabled space and then maybe not having a car or getting rid of it. Do we monitor these things, and are we able to monitor the use of the actual space itself? Because it strikes me as puzzling that we should have a disabled space, and okay, it's only hearsay, but somebody's commenting that it's hardly ever used. So
that's a very good point. Very good point, Councillor Flynn. We'll go back to Craig.
Thanks, convener. Yes, we do monitor them, convener, in the sense that we regularly receive reports from members of the public, whether they be neighbours or passing drivers, that they've seen a disabled space and no one seems to park in it anymore. When we receive these reports, we undertake surveys to see if the bay is still being used. If it is still being used, no action is taken. If it isn't being used, we'll start the process to have that bay removed, so the road network isn't left with a number of unused disabled bays across the area.
Okay.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah, thank you, Craig, for that answer. And my second point really is, it seems to be, from what I've seen anyway, that the disabled bays are larger than regular parking spaces, and I guess that's to do perhaps with the disabilities or whatever. How much larger are they? Are they 1.5 car lengths or whatever? Is there a standard measurement?
Craig?
Again, through you, convener. Yes, when the bays, there are different sizes for different arrangement of spaces. So the space that we're considering here at Fairley Street will be a different size from the space that you considered previously at Balmoral. The reason being, the Fairley Street space is parallel with the carriageway. The Balmoral space was perpendicular to the edge of the carriageway. So the Fairley Street space will be 6.6 metres long. Now, that is a requirement of the road markings regulations. Every road marking on the road has to come from a book, and that book details that disabled spaces shall be 6.6 metres when they're marked along the carriageway, such as Fairley Street. A normal car parking space would be about 5 metres, maybe slightly less in a Tesco car park. Obviously, in Fairley Street, there are no marked spaces other than disabled spaces. Yeah. So residents may choose to park, bumper to bumper with one another, or they may choose to park with a lot more space between them.
That's good. Thank you very much. That clarifies things. Thank you, convener.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, convener. Just a couple of questions, Craig, on the back of Bailey Kerr's contribution there. I totally agree. Fairley Street is a very busy street. Can you maybe tell us how many disabled parking spaces there currently are on the street in total?
Convener, in response to Councillor Nimmo's question, the short answer is no, not in total. What I can do, if I can briefly share my screen, is show you what there are in the vicinity of the current space that's being considered. If you bear with me. Hopefully you can see this PDF before you now.
Yeah.
So the space that we're considering, and I'll zoom in a second if you like. The space that we're considering at the moment is this space over here, marked in red. You can see a further space in green, slightly further east. Another space in red east of that. One in green further down the road, and another in green further down the road again. So there is a bundle of 3 spaces, one of which has an approved TRO, 2 of which that are under discussion this morning.
Right, well, there's maybe an added problem to this as well, because anybody that's driving into Fairley Street with a blue badge can park in any of these spaces, which could cause an added problem. Has there been a traffic management survey done on Fairley Street in general because of the amount of traffic and the parked cars on both sides of the road?
Convener, I'm not aware that there's been any sort of traffic management survey carried out on Fairley Street recently. When we receive applications for disabled bays, we do consider matters such as how many there are in the street, whether the bay would have a significant impact on the passage of traffic, or the ability of neighbouring residents to park. And in this situation, it has been our determination that the proposed bay wouldn't have an impact on that.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Thanks, Convener.
No, that's a good question. I think we all realise we've got serious problems with parking everywhere. Every community's got problems. And I remember 25 years ago when I had suggested to the council that what we should be doing is we should be taking away people's front gardens and letting them park in there. And most people that has got a wee bit of money are doing that now, because even 25 years ago, every household never had 2 and 3 cars. We're living in a different world now, and everybody wants to park right next to their house. And I'm afraid that's not possible now. People that require disabled car parking spaces require them for that particular purpose, and then we've got to ensure that they're there. Okay, then I'm just going to formally move that we somebody else, Councillor Bow, sorry.
Thank you, Convener. It's just a clarification point, and it's sort of looking at both of them. I know they're both in the same street, and one of the things, and I think Councillor Nimmo touched on it a little bit there, but a disabled bay can be used by anyone with a blue badge. These don't belong to the people who make the application. They belong to all people who have blue badges. So that, am I right that there is no particular ownership of the bay itself, that they are open to all people who have got a blue badge?
Through you, Convener, yes, Councillor Boyce is correct in his understanding.
Okay, if anybody else like to come in, because I'm going to formally move at this stage. We've been asked to consider the terms of this report, including the objections, and determine whether the order should be made. And I'm moving formally that the order should be made in terms of this item. Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Anybody otherwise minded? Okay, agreed. Thank you very much. That takes us to the last item on your agenda this morning, the Falkirk Council on-street parking space for disabled persons, Order 20, pages 56 to 66 on your agenda, and the report is by Craig Russell again. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Convener. Again, at the risk of repeating myself, this report concerns an application for a disabled person's parking space on Fairley Street, Camelin. In terms of the Council's scheme of delegation, this decision requires to be made by committee as 4 unresolved objections have been received to the making of the order. In terms of the relevant legislation, the authority requires to consider all objections made and not withdrawn before making the order. An application was received by a qualifying person and a suitable location was identified for the space. This is shown on page 60 of your report. 4 objections were received and responded to, as detailed on pages 62 to 66. The objections have not been removed, hence this report being placed before you.
Thanks, Craig. Opening it up again to members. Bailey Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. Craig, looking at the drawing on page 60, our report, and 52, do we put these bays all on the one side of the street, or do they cross over all the way up the street?
Through you, convener. In this instance, they're both provided on the same side of the street. This goes back to a comment I made earlier in relation to the Balmoral one, I think, Councillor Bailey-Kerr. It depends. When we undertake a survey to try and locate a suitable position for the spaces, we do have regard to how residents park in the area. So if residents all park on the west side of the street or the east side, then that is typically the side of the street that we would put the bay. We wouldn't look to upset the existing parking practices by putting the bay in. And again, we try and position the bay at the location where the applicant's vehicle has been observed during the surveys. So if the applicant's vehicle is always on one side of the road and all the neighbours park on that side of the road, that's where we're going to identify the bay.
Right, thanks, Craig. Craig, have you got the drawing of the location as shown ours as page 60?
Sorry, Bailey-Kerr. Yeah, the committee report I have, it has it on page 60.
Yeah, that's correct, Craig.
Yep.
See the pieces of ground either across or at the back yet? They're actually in like an oblong square thing. Is that just grass verges?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks. Leading on for your proposal, I think that could have been early years into parking busy. Thanks, Craig.
Councillor Flynn.
Yep, thank you, convener. Really just following on from Craig's excellent explanation earlier on about the non-ownership of these bays. Objection number 2 is saying that the person that used the bays says it's their bay. I just wonder, have they or will the person that uses that bay be advised that it's not their personal bay, just to avoid any conflict in the future? It'd make a lot of sense to me. Thanks.
Good point. Craig?
Yes, convener, through you. Yes, Councillor Flynn, the applicants are made aware at the time that a decision is made on the bay that the bay isn't theirs, that anyone with a blue badge can park in them.
Right, okay, thank you, convener.
I think we've got to realise as well is that we're now living in an ageing population. And the fact is that, sadly, well, the good thing about an ageing population is that everybody's living longer, but it brings with it the problems in terms of health, as the NHS would tell you about that. So the fact is that if people require, and I'll say this again, if people require a disabled parking space, then it's up to us to ensure that we provide it. Councillor Forrest.
Just a quick one. I thank you to Councillor Flynn for raising the part of objection 2. However, I feel that this is going to cause us headaches in the future, especially when you read the objection. And them at number keep telling us that this is their bay, nobody can go into it. I'm pleased that Craig has said that they'll be notified that anybody can use it. However, they go on, say, if he gets one, I want one too. This is going to be a nightmare. However,
as you say, we're dealing with this. If he wants to come in, we'll deal with that.
We'll have to deal with that at the time.
Okay, I'm going to formally move that we grant the order.
Seconded.
Second. Anybody otherwise minded? No? Okay, agreed. Thank you very much. And that's the last item on the agenda. I'd like to thank everybody, both members and officials, both here and online, for coming today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, convener.
Thank you.